Okay, so people are joining. We can start. So we have a few new faces here, which is exciting and also quite expected since it's a very hot topic that we are talking about today. So if you are new here, feel very welcome. I'm Fernanda 𝗗𝗄𝗺𝗆. I'm the host of these coffee chats. And they usually happen once a month where we bring some content to discuss with our colleagues in the industry. And we also have a guest speaker to help us understand what's really going on with the topic that we're talking, right? So just to start, we are talking today about demystifying agentic commerce in Latin America. I'm sure a lot of you are very excited about this. So we have a lot to cover so we can really get started. And as usual, before we start, we have our virtual etiquette. Lau, if you can move forward. We have our legal notice here. And so just a few things to keep in mind is that we do publish this material in our YouTube channel. So please don't take screenshots. You can also go to our website and access our slides and the material. And also, please feel free to open your camera, your mic, and participate, ask questions, comments. This is really a place where we can share and learn from each other, okay? So moving forward, what we have for today, as you all know, this year we put the coffee chat a little bit different. So as a couple of you know, we hosted our Megatrends webinar in the beginning of the year, where we selected the trends that would be shaping the industry in 2026. And the idea of the coffee chat is that we are taking one mega trends per month and really going deep into it. So for today, I will be representing PCMI, and I will be just bringing the content a little bit just so we can have some introduction on the topic. But with me, we'll have also Carlos Berlanga from Stripe. He's the head of solutions architecture for LatAm and US West. So Carlos, really appreciate your time and being here with us today. And of course, Carlos will share with us his vision on the topic and also what Stripe has been doing, which will be really important and exciting, right? So just jumping a little bit on the megatrends. So these are the megatrends that we'll be covering throughout the year. Last time we talked about B2B payments modernization. Now we are covering the second one, which is AI becoming the gateway to commerce. And next time we'll talk about multi-rail world, right? So really just get us started. I'm sure that, well, this could be a bit repetitive for some of you that were here in our Megatrends webinar and also in our first coffee chat. But of course, we updated a little bit with our slides, with the things that has happened since then, and also the things that we want us to be discussing today. So I will try to be brief so we have more time for Carlos. But if you have questions or comments, feel free to interrupt. Okay, so last time where we start to talk about AI-enabled shopping, we presented this maturity curve, right? And one thing that we really wanted to highlight is that we are talking about AI-enabled shopping and not agentic commerce yet. And why is that? Because the agentic commerce is still conceptual, and it really means a very mature, very autonomous and automated process, which we are definitely not there yet, right? So what we wanted to show is really the phases or the steps that we have moving towards that capability. So what we want to show today basically is where we are now, especially in Latin America, is phase one, right? So consumers and clients, they are using the AI chatbot to find products, to compare price, and ultimately they go to the merchant website to place the payment and complete the transaction. Phase 2, when we presented, was active in the US. It still is, but it's the AI embedded checkout, right? So it's actually where consumers complete the entire purchase inside the AI interface. So you have an embedded checkout, and the client is not redirected to the merchant website. Everything it's complete within the AI interface, right? But this is not autonomous or agentic because the consumer still needs to confirm that transaction. And we put this symbol here because since we presented this, actually OpenAI has eliminated the embedded checkout. It's still live for Google Gemini for selected merchants and products, but really OpenAI just discontinued this embedded checkout, mainly due to merchant frictions, challenges on fraud, liability, and also consumer adoption, which they saw that most of consumers still, after doing all the discovery portion, they went to the merchant website to complete the transaction, where is the place that they trust and they recognize, right? So instead of being a permanent phase, what we are seeing is that this become more like a experimental phase. And it might be something that you can be, some companies can skip, right? And then finally, we have the autonomous agentic commerce, which is actually where AI monitors preference, inventory, and prices, and transactions are done autonomously, right? So you still can set some guardrails and the budget, but this is where it happens autonomously. And again, this is still conceptual, right? What we have and what is happening in Latin America specifically is phase 1. And how do we know that? So Lau, if you can move forward. We actually have a lot of studies that prove that Latin Americans are experiment a lot of AI-enabled shopping, right? So here we have that 70% of Latin America have used AI for shopping, compared to 61% in the US, and mainly for gift inspiration, price comparison, and then 83% year-over-year growth in e-commerce site traffic via AI tools, and consumers are 30% more likely to buy if they are using AI tools, right? So this is really just showing the case that Latin America is really using AI for shopping, right? And then move forward. Just breaking this down, what is missing to fully enable this AI orchestrate commerce, especially in Latin America? So before we go to the portion that if it's available or not, let's look at the players, right? So we have the AI chat app, which is the user interface, which can be Google Gemini, ChatGPT. We have the checkout surface owner, which also can be Google Gemini or OpenAI, which is ultimately responsible for the payments orchestration, wallet selection, and checkout execution. We have this identity layer where we talked in the previous sessions, where it's the tech stack that links the ID where you log into the AI app to your payments credential. So it store your card tokens, manage your identity, address, and payments credentials, right? And then you also have the PSP acquirer, which can be Stripe, Shopify Payments, which ultimately retrieves card network token, authorization, and settlement. And what is available already in Latin America? So of course, we do have the AI chat apps, right? So we have all of those, ChatGPT, Google Gemini. We don't have any embedded checkout, right? So Google Gemini is live in the US, but not expanded to other countries, especially not in Latin America. About the identity wallet, this is very fragmented, so it's not ready as it is in the US. And also for this to work, we should have 100% of card tokenization. And in Latin America, that's quite uneven. It's about 50% of card tokenization. So that could be also a barrier. And finally, looking for the PSP acquirers, will they be able to operate in a process like this? And yes, most of the tier 1 acquirers are already able to operate in AI orchestrated commerce. So what's the challenge and the barrier in Latin America would be the lack of embedded checkout, of course, but also this identity wallet, which is fragmented and uneven card tokenization, right? Moving forward, and this is where it becomes more interesting, and the hypothesis that we want to discuss here today is, okay, so how do we enable this phase 3 in Latin America, right? And the question is that if we look to Latin America infrastructure, especially in Brazil, we could kind of create a hypothesis that Latin America could enable it faster than the US. And why is that? Because of the infrastructure we have for Pix automático, and also payment initiation, right? So this can be a bit complicated, so let's break this down. So what is required for autonomous agentic payments? So you need the merchant to have its inventory exposed via APIs. You need some tokenized and agent-ready payments credential. We need pre-authorized mandate and programmable constraints, and also programmable transaction initiation without human confirmation. And if we look what already exists in Brazil, so we do have embedded commerce. We do have merchants exposing APIs through marketplaces, financial institutions, or other apps. We have push payments APIs with Pix. We have recurrent payment protocols with Pix automático. And we have open banking and payments initiation, which allows to those payments to be triggered by a third-party institution, right? So we have already a lot of the infrastructure, of course, not in the way we think for agentic commerce, or in the way that the industry has conceptualized it, right? But let's see how this would work in a Pix world, right? So moving forward, if we look for our current transaction flow, right? So we have a fintech app that makes an API call to Pix automático, and ultimately we have the Pix settlement to complete that transaction. So in this flow, what is missing to really enable autonomous commerce? What is missing is the wallet layer authentication, right? So in a card-centric world, that would be where the tokenization actually sits in. But in a Pix world, we actually have a alias within financial institution apps, which needs biometric to authenticate, right? So it requires biometric to authenticate. So in this is actually already built somehow, and this simplifies a little bit of the flow. So if we think, okay, but what still needs to be built? So we need a structured way for agent to initiate a payments with the merchant, right? This is not in place and this is not built. And we do need programmable guardrails and clear liability rules. So is what is required, but the back-end flow and infrastructure is quite already there. I guess the question is, and we posed those questions before, is like, do consumers really want this? And if so, in which use cases, right? So now this is my part. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this before. It's just to really set the ground and bring some context so we can discuss and hear what Carlos can present to us.
Thank you, Fernanda. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'm Carlos Berlanga. As Fernanda said, I lead the solutions architecture team for Stripe in Latin America. Thank you, Fernanda, for setting the stage so nicely and presenting to us what agentic commerce is, what the challenges are, and what needs to get built. What I want to do for my section is talk about what Stripe is doing, what are kind of the challenges that we're seeing, what we're building, and then hopefully leave you with some actionable recommendations on what you can do and start exploring to start getting ready for this new world of agentic commerce. So if we can move to the next slide. And yeah, we can skip the agenda. All right, so this is, I think, the central tension that we see right now. The traditional commerce model where the merchant owns the whole journey, that is breaking down in a world of AI agents, right? Like they get there in the middle of the transaction, the customers interact with the AI agents with the merchant. And this presents several challenges, right? For the merchant side, how do you maintain multiple endpoints for each of the agents? How do you keep your product feeds up to date? You don't have visibility into your users. You don't have a trust layer. And we're going to talk about that part, how the fraud signals that we relied on for a long time kind of break down. And this is exactly what Stripe is trying to build. We're building the unifying layer so that there's a single integration between AI agents, users, and merchants, so that merchants don't have to build multiple integrations with each of the agents. They get full visibility into the user journey. They're protected against fraud, and that they can take payments securely. What we want to avoid is that middle scenario, because that means higher chargebacks, lower conversions, and it's also a mess to support and maintain, right? Imagine building integrations with just 4 to 5 like highly used AI agents, but that world is going to keep growing. So that's what Stripe is building.
So Carlos, I'm just gonna, if it's okay, I'm gonna jump in and help summarize what I'm hearing, at least so I can follow you. So what I'm hearing you say is agentic commerce with Stripe. It's almost like an aggregator of AI agents, or one single connection point to access, to connect with the dozens of AI agents that might be out there that a merchant might need to interact with.
That is correct. I think that is one part, but it's also defining how agents interact with merchants. And it's we have an open protocol that I'll talk about. But yeah, I think that's a great summary of it.
Great.
Thank you. If you can go to the next slide, please. So I'll talk about 4 pillars as part of what we call our agentic commerce suite. The first part is discovery. We're going to dive into more detail into each, but it's how do we make the merchant's products machine readable, right? So that, as I said, you can manage your product feed. You don't need to build integrations with every single agent. Then on the checkout side, how do we allow agents to check out on behalf of users? So right now, how it works, it's either the user's completing the transaction or the agent tries to navigate the website, but websites are not built for agents, right? It gets messy very quickly. They can't read the whole page. They can see a lot of what's happening. So defining how checkouts work, like machine to machine. The next part is identity and fraud. I'm going to talk about how this is very quickly evolving. We've always thought of bots as bad, right? And we want to block bots, but in a world of agentic commerce, bots can be good or they can be bad, right? So knowing which traffic to trust is going to be critical here. And then last but not least, payments. How can you share as a user your credentials with an agent and know that that's not going to get leaked, right? They're not going to make a mistake and put that somewhere where it doesn't, or where it shouldn't go. So I'll dive into more detail on shared payment tokens. And the platform underneath all of this is our Stripe platform. We process close to $1.5 trillion a year. We've seen 92% of credit cards before they hit any merchants. And this network of data, I think, is what makes us highly reliable and effective when it comes to being able to process transactions and increase those authorization rates, reduce chargebacks, and so forth. So we can move to the next slide and we can start with discovery. So I think the question that most merchants haven't asked themselves is, how can I get my agent to actually find, or how can I get an AI agent to find and understand my product catalog? And right now, how that looks like is they might have a sense of your website, but websites have images, they have PDFs, and agents work best when there's structured data, right? They need attributes, real-time inventory, and then product details that they can reason about. So if you go and ask an agent, hey, go find me a jacket for under $100 with next day delivery, your catalog needs to be able to answer that question. So that is what we're doing right now with the Agentic Commerce Suite. Think about it as it's like what HTTP did for browsers. It's a common language so that an agent can talk to any merchant and understand what they offer, and then be able to offer those products to the user so that they can choose. And this is part of level 1, right? A big part of, or we've seen a massive increase in traffic from basically AI source traffic, right? People go on ChatGPT, look for products, and then that sources several products. They click and then check out. This is high intent traffic, so it's extremely valuable.
So Carlos, can we actually we try to break this down a little bit? So the buyer experience, right? I'm in ChatGPT or I'm in Gemini. I'm looking for a product. In most cases today, if you look for a product, look for these sneakers, you're getting redirected to the merchant. So in that case, just how does this flow work from an actual, if any of us were to go out and try to interact with a merchant in this way, what would that flow look like?
So it depends on the agent. Different agents are going to show products in a different way. But right now, I think it's just AI. So it's an AI source discovery. And then the user is the one that's going to be ultimately checking out, right?
Got it.
But
so what's the agent's role? If I'm using the chat platform for discovery, and then I'm going to the merchant's website, what is the role of the agent actually in that flow?
It's a great question. I think it's helping you find products, right? I think what people would do with Google and still do, but I feel like this is also happening in LLMs. As you say, people go and find, like, help me find the best sneakers of the year, or like, whatever it is that you're looking for. People all across the world are putting this more and more in these types of surfaces rather than just in a search box.
Perfect. So right now we're just talking about getting your SKUs exposed and get them discoverable within an AI chat platform.
100%.
Perfect.
And Carlos, I also have a question. It's more like a curiosity, because when I think about this flow, for example, you said merchants need to have their website ready to agents, like read. Now we have like images, PDFs, and things that is not really agent optimized, right? So how do you see now in this transition phase between SMBs and big merchants, right? Because maybe the big merchants can move a little bit faster, but what's the SMB should be doing in this stage to be ready for agents?
That's a great question. I think that's one of our big value propositions with this, is that you can very easily upload your feed, right? You can do this with a complex API integration if you wish to do that, but also we can connect. If we go to the next slide, actually, we can also connect with some of the most common e-commerce platforms. So you're a small business selling on Shopify or one of the tools that you see there, you can simply connect, and that's going to make your product catalog available to agents immediately. And you also have control, right? This doesn't mean by default this goes out to every single agent. You can pick and choose which ones you want to surface your offerings in.
Fantastic.
All right. So we can go to the next part, which is identity and fraud. This is a very interesting world. And actually, if we can go to the next slide, because I think that shows a better picture of what's happening. This new world of agentic commerce, I think, changes significantly how we think about fraud, right? Fraud models have been trained on human traffic, on velocity, on things that don't really apply to agents making purchases. So there's new fraud patterns, and if we don't adjust, right, what's going to happen is, as merchants are going to be spending more time fighting fraud, there's going to be more fraud losses. There's also going to be a lot of false positives, right? Because traffic that looks like a bot that by the current models, like you would never accept are actually legitimate. They could be agents transacting on behalf of legitimate users, right? So this is somewhere where we're investing heavily with Radar, which is our fraud solution. We're giving merchants the ability to identify good traffic from agents as well as bad traffic from bots, because that's also a potential new fraud vector, right? With this technology, you can also do automated attacks in a scale that you couldn't do before. So this is also a big area for us. And we make this also part of our Agentic Commerce Suite that we're going to see on the next slide as part of payments. Like fraud signals are included as part of the payment. And I think one question that I get asked frequently is about liability, right? What happens in this new world? And I think this is genuinely an open question, right? We don't know how things look like right now. And this is very focused on the US, which is where we are initially launching these products, is that liability stays the same. We consider it a card not present transaction, which means the liability remains with the merchant. There is an option to use 3DS, which helps with liability shift. But I think this is going to change quickly. And as an industry, we're going to have to figure this out.
Yeah, Carlos, I'm wondering, like you said, the liability still sits with the merchant. So what kind of questions are you guys hearing from merchants, and what's their overall temperature? Are they excited about this? Are they scared about this? What are their major questions at this point in time?
I think it's a combination of both. One question that I've heard frequently is, like, who's liable when the agent goes rogue, right? Like, can we make the agent liable? Like, we're introducing a new party here, and how do we make sure that they're responsible for when things go wrong? And I don't think there's a good answer, right? Like, we are still figuring this out as an industry.
Okay. And who writes those rules? Who is actively who does that final decision making sit with today?
I think that's going to depend on the country and the region, right? Some regions are a bit more permissive than others. So that's good and bad. Some regions allow for more experimentation, like we've seen in the US, whereas some regions are a bit more risk averse, both like as an industry, but also on the regulatory side of things. So I think it's still TBD, and open to hearing everyone's opinion and where this can be.
Yeah, one of the top of mind questions that comes to us from our network is, well, what are regulators doing or thinking about this? And banks, for example, or others wanting to help create that narrative for regulators. I mean, regulators have so much to keep up with technology-wise. This is way beyond the scope of understanding of most regulators. And so, a job to be done is influencing regulators to understand this and then create a framework that everyone feels comfortable operating in. And I think that's still something that, as you said, something that still needs to be done in most markets. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we all play a role in putting some pressure, right, on those things to move quickly and have more clarity.
Can I jump in on this? I think that this is the biggest question that needs to be figured out for full-on agentic AI involvement in purchases, is that if the customer says, I didn't want to make a purchase, and their agent made the purchase, who's left holding the bag? Is it the merchant? Because that's going to make them not want to do it. Is it the merchant's bank? That's going to, they're not going to want to do it if they get left holding it. Is it the issuing bank? They're not going to want to be left holding it, so they're going to shut it down. This has to be figured out. This is the game. It's either going to continue down the pathway of developing these ideas, or it's not, and this is what's going to stop it if it's not. It's all a matter of just, Lindsay knows what I'm about to say here. It's all a matter of dispute resolution.
That is a great point.
Where I come from, my background, I look at it very specifically. I built Visa's global debit card system for them in '96. I've written national and international data security standards for the payment industry. I'm one of the top technical experts in the rails. And so I look at every way where the system can break, and more importantly, where someone can break it. And this is opening some vulnerabilities, and that's just the way that it is. But we need to be aggressively proactive on those vulnerabilities.
That is a great point, Nick. Yeah, I think the system is only as good as the weakest link, and this can very well be the weakest link there.
And just to add a little bit more regarding regulation, of course, this is not so much touching payments, but I think another question is about market concentration, right? Because now we are not selling direct to consumers. You have an agent in between, which kind of breaks down the brand appealing that has built with consumers for a long time and can maybe understand quality of the product with, I don't know, numbers of review, which can actually lead to bigger companies having more attention. So you also can create some type of dysfunction on the market, and regulators are also looking into that for the agentic part.
Yeah, that's a great point, Fernanda. Go ahead, Lindsay.
And Carlos, can you help us understand, is this happening actually today? Are agents conducting transactions on behalf of consumers today?
We're starting to see some of that, but it's not, I think it's just people experimenting at this point. I don't think there's a lot other than like the few, there's like the Gemini checkout and like Meta announced like in-app conversions, which are still user-based. But yeah, I don't think there's like an actual formal or like company that's doing this on behalf of users.
Got it. So from Stripe's perspective, how are you thinking about this? Are you simply preparing the infrastructure for what we know is to come? Or is it more like this is actually happening right now and we are facilitating these transactions? Is this more of a midterm thing that you're building for? How are you thinking about the timeline?
That is a good question. I think it's getting prepared for what's coming. I don't think this is happening just yet, but things go quickly, right? Like the change that we've seen in the last 6 months in terms of adoption and what you can do with LLMs. So I think we're trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. Great.
All right. So if we can go to the next slide, we'll talk about what we're doing on the payment side. And I wanted to focus on shared payment tokens. And this is one way in which we can mitigate a lot of the concerns, right? Particularly on how do we make sure that agents don't go rogue, expose credentials. So shared payment tokens, a very simple way to think about this is a highly scoped gift card, right? It's as a certain amount, it's scoped to a certain merchant for a limited time window. And then if the agent tries to use that outside of those parameters, it fails, right? So this is one approach for trying to mitigate data leak and things going wrong and fraud. Because if anyone gets a hold of it, they can only use it on that merchant for a certain amount and for a certain period of time. So that really limits kind of the blast radius of leaked credentials. The other thing to mention is that these are designed to be interoperable with other PSPs. So we're not positioning it as like something just for us. This is something that can be used by others. I think Klarna is an example of a company that's using this as well.
Carlos, can you repeat what you said about the gift card? I think you're making an analogy there.
Yeah, so think of a shared payment token. Rather than sharing your credit card number with the agent and not knowing where that goes, right? It's just a token that has a certain amount allowed scoped to a certain merchant for a specific time window. So it has a time to live, right? So imagine you get a gift card, but you can only use it at Best Buy, for example, for $100 between 2 and 3 p.m.
So that's that programmable aspect where you're actually the consumer is determining where and how much and for what. And I'm just curious, do you all have, or anyone, a vision of what the user experience will look like when setting those guardrails? Who will control that interface? What kind of options will be available? Has this been shaped up? Has this been envisioned? How do we think that this will take place? This is a question for anyone, if anyone's been actively working on that or has some ideas there. Is it the bank that or the fintech that owns the credential that will interface with the user? That's kind of what I'm imagining. We're stumped today. Okay.
I can share my thoughts. I think you don't want to put the onus on the user, right? Like this is something that gets defined at the time of transaction, when you have details of like where you want to purchase from for how much. So I feel like that's part of just the payment flow. As a user, you don't care about that. You just want to transact safely.
Okay. So you're saying, Carlos, the user isn't necessarily making those decisions. It's just, I want to buy this product, and then those decisions are happening in the back end. Got it.
That's right. Yeah, I think otherwise it's just too much friction in the process.
I see. And what about in a future where, when we talk about agentic AI, people talk about, agents making decisions, financial decisions for consumers according to pre-arranged guardrails, buy this at this price point, right? So at some point, this is perhaps too forward thinking. We don't have clarity yet, but at some point, the decisions will need to be set up in advance. You have permission to make these types of transactions within these parameters, but it's not really clear yet what that user experience looks like. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's still an open question, and I do see a world where that happens. Especially if we move towards like the phase 3 that Fernanda showed, where it's fully autonomous, there should be some guardrails, right?
Well, the difficult part that you're dealing with, and I like that you're dealing with it and you're talking about it, is that you have absolutely no control over the AI agent itself. So the agreements that are made between the customer and the AI agent, you have no idea about. You're not getting any information from the buyer. You're getting it from the agent, and you are having to trust that. Well, how good is that AI agent? Is it really following its instruction? Your job at Stripe is to streamline everything, which you're doing. You're making it easy. You're making it so that the customer doesn't have to jump through hoops, and the merchant doesn't have to jump through hoops. You're pretty much, at Stripe, you're the best at that. Historically, you have been, and you're continuing to be, and you're being proactive with this, which is really good. But the AI agent itself is not under your control. You have to trust it, and that's the gray area. I like that we're having this conversation now rather than 5 years from now when it's a complete mess out there. You're being proactive about it. It's actually setting Stripe up really well, because why would a merchant not use Stripe if there's this risk out there and you're already ahead of the game? So this is a good business move as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, Nick. I think you're absolutely right that a big part of the success of this is how reliable agents are and how much consumers trust them. That's still also TBD at this point.
Yeah, and it's actually a known problem even with human agents, right? So when you hire someone to do, I don't know, a purchase for you, like a travel agent or, I don't know, a real estate agent, you have your own objectives, but then the agent can have different incentives to fulfill the purchase or the transaction, right? So that's a known problem between principal and agent, and how we can maybe streamline that process between human and the AI agent. That's also something quite important to be talking about.
I think you're absolutely right, Fernanda. That is a corollary there. The positive side of the person being the agent is that the customer has a relationship, presumably a business relationship with their agent that has agreements and legal standing and business incorporations and insurance behind it that the agent is doing what the customer wants. That is not there for AI agents.
Exactly. And the reputation and relationship. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and liability.
True.
Yeah.
Good conversation.
It's also when you say that, it's, Monique, you mentioned the AI agent, Fernanda mentioned these other agents that we might work with, but then there's just the human buyer, the human agent buying on behalf of myself, but there still is fraud, there's buyer's remorse, there's friendly fraud, there are still all of these problems, even when the fully empowered and autonomous credential owner makes a transaction, and all of that liability has already been worked out by the card networks, the issuing banks, the acquirers, and the regulators. So now it's really up to that same four-party model to create the rules for this ecosystem.
I think you're absolutely right. And part of the fraud that we're dealing with in the future with an AI agent is the customer having buyer's remorse and just claiming, I didn't do it.
Right, exactly.
And then, well, how do we deal with that? It was the agent that did it for me. It wasn't me. Who's going to say otherwise?
Yeah.
There's a new door open as a legitimate issue as to who takes responsibility for what.
Mm-hmm. If we think about it, how the card industry was built and scaled, whoever whoever makes the rules very clear and easy to understand, and then whoever is willing to assume the risk, those are the two enabling factors. If the rules are clear and I'm not responsible as the customer, those are the two enabling factors to make this work. And so again, it's that risk averse. You have to be willing to take on the risk to enable something to happen. So the networks and the issuers who are willing to authorize the transaction will be and potentially experience losses, as this is still an experimental phase. But those are the players that potentially will start to unlock this and get the ball rolling as the agent flow starts to get built.
If we can be proactive on this rather than reactive, they've got a much better outcome at the end of the day for this succeeding.
100%. Yeah, being proactive is going to be critical there. And yeah, this is going to be built step by step, right? There's not going to be like a single framework or a single vision that's going to solve everything right away.
Excellent.
All right, if we can move to the next slide. I think, Fernanda, you covered a lot of this, so I'll just briefly go through it. But there's both, I think, particularly when it comes to Latin America, there's good tailwinds in terms of AI adoption and usage, as well as local rails. It's a highly digitalized population. So I think that is something very positive for the region. And hopefully that means that Latin America moves faster and adopts agentic commerce quicker than the rest of the world. There's still several things that are missing, which I think, Fernanda, you mentioned around tokenization. The other thing I wanted to call out is just the lower trust baseline. And this goes beyond AI-initiated transactions, but that's why we have Boleto and OXXO, right? Just like, an underbanked population to start, and also the fact that people are not willing to share credentials. So think about letting an agent transact on your behalf. That's going to be something we're going to have to figure out, right? As how to build trust so that users feel comfortable in Latin America. We talked about regulatory clarity. And the last point is the merchant readiness in terms of making their catalogs and their data available to agents to surface products, right? If you're not there, then we don't even need to worry about tokenization and transactions because agents are not going to be choosing the merchant's products.
Mm-hmm. So a couple of interesting questions here, and I'd love to hear, we have a quiet group today, which I'm surprised about. I guess everyone's very just curious and in a learning phase. You know, I think the trust question is really interesting, especially in Latin America. You know, card brands are very trusted. At the same time, people are traditionally afraid of exposing their card numbers, right? Putting their card online, that's considered risky. And especially within an AI environment, that may be considered even more risky. However, A2A rails are seemingly, consumers have less problem sharing their bank account information, as evidenced by Pix, as evidenced by people very easily sharing their 𝗟𝗏𝗺𝗆 in Mexico and for transfers over 𝗟𝗏𝗆, and a push transaction, maybe you feel like you have a little bit more control rather than compromising your card number. So there's some mentality questions here, and it makes me wonder, are A2A rails combined with payment initiation and open banking standards, and even in the case of Brazil with Pix Automático and having programmable payments already a part of reality, is it possible that it could be built even faster than over card rails in an A2A environment? I don't know if this question has really been asked, if this is a question that's up for debate. Most of the chatter and the narrative in the ecosystem right now is really around card rails. You know, Visa and MasterCard have been very vocal, coming out early in 2025 with solutions. So it's a question. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts about that, whether we're seeing agentic movement over A2A rails. Any thoughts? Carlos, have you at Stripe, have you all considered this?
That's something we're thinking about, even though initially what we're launching is exclusive to the US. But yeah, we're keeping an eye on everything that's happening there. And particularly Pix Automático is a very interesting model, right? Like right now it's just for recurring payments, but I think it has the basic building blocks of what potentially could be like an agent first payment method. So we're keeping a close eye on that.
Very good. Excellent. And Carlos, I was wondering if you could comment a little bit about the role of Link. This was announced, at Stripe Sessions in San Francisco. Link is very well positioned as the wallet for AI agents. And, when I was experimenting, in the past when I've experimented around making purchases in ChatGPT, for example, you find a product, you select buy, and what populated at that time was my credentials that were already stored in Stripe Link. Now that wasn't exposed anywhere in the user experience, and I had to kind of do some digging to understand what is the flow that's actually happening in this UX that I'm seeing, which is just ChatGPT. But all of my payment, I had never made a payment in ChatGPT before, but all of my credentials, my address, everything were already preloaded there. And so now since then, ChatGPT has stopped that flow. They've kind of killed their embedded checkout. But can you speak a little bit to the role of Link and how that flow, how Stripe envisions that flow taking place? You know, it was a very smooth experience, and I think Stripe is actively strategizing to make Link the core infrastructure to these transactions. So just curious of your thoughts there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's something that was presented at Sessions, which is our annual conference this year in late April. So yeah, that's a vision that we have for Link, both being a wallet in which users can very easily, just with their email and a two-factor authentication login, get access to their credentials and pay easily. But also as kind of your agentic wallet, right? Like whether it's a user-initiated transaction or agentic down the road, this could be like the agent at the end of the day doesn't care about which payment method you choose. The user just wants to choose whatever they prefer. And then that should be interoperable with different agents. So yeah, it's going to play a key role. That's how we see it.
Yeah.
I've got
and
a
that
quick
identity
question on
layer.
that.
Yeah, go for it, Nick.
Sorry, very quick question. If there's a field in the messaging with a transaction that indicates whether it's agentic initiated or consumer initiated, how do you know if it's accurate? Could the agent just say, no, the customer did this? Or is there a way of actually knowing?
That is a very good question. I don't think I have a good answer, but if I could speculate, there's got to be some kind of like authentication, right? Whether the user kind of delegated authority and said like the agent can purchase this much at this merchant, or if the user is accepting the transaction and completing it, then you know, like it was approved by the user, right? So that's a fair point that we have to figure out. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Nick?
Well, my concern is that there are criminal organizations that have been attacking the card rails for the last 50 years, and they're very, very good at it. And if they're able to mess with the system by saying, oh, no, the customer did this, not an AI agent, and they're running AI agents all the time, pretending to be customers, but claiming they're the actual customer. If you just trust the message and you don't really know, that is a concern. That it could be exploited. These criminal organizations are really, really good at what they do, and we're really, really good at stopping them and keeping it to a minimum. But it's a continuous battle and has been for 50 years.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a legitimate concern. It's a game of cat and mouse, right? In the fraud space, there's always a new threat, a new way to take advantage of the system. So yeah, fully agree that that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on and continue evolving. There's no one solution. There's always new fraud vectors.
Mm-hmm. And Carlos, I know that this is really mostly a US-centric narrative right now, building for the US, but how does Stripe think about global expansion? Are there priority markets outside the US? Where do you think that this is most AI ready compared to other regions? How does Latin America fit into that picture?
That is a great question. We're a global company, so we hope to make this available across the world eventually. I don't have a timeline that I can share, unfortunately, but yes, this is something that is happening everywhere, and we hope to offer these products across the world over time.
Okay. And another question I have, or maybe a good closing question, are there more slides that we have to share?
There's one more.
One more.
Okay, let's go to that. Yeah. Okay, that was going to be my question. So great closer.
Thank you. So wanted to give you something actionable today. We've been talking about what's going to happen in the future, but what can you do about it today? And I'm going to focus on the first section there on banks and processors. I think evaluating where you stand relative to ACP and UCP, which are the two agentic commerce protocols that have come out. I think Fernanda talked about token infrastructure, the fact that it's at 50% in the region. But if we want to be able to let agents process transactions, that needs to be at 100%. And I think we also covered the second one there, right? How do we make those A2A rails agent callable? And that's something that we need to figure out and push for. And then lastly, updating your fraud models. We need to be ready when those agentic transactions start coming in. How do we make sure we don't block the legitimate ones or let through the ones that are nefarious? So those are 3 things to keep in mind. And then on the merchant side, just thinking about the level 1, right, where it's the agent helping out with discovery and the user transacting, but how do you make it easy for users to convert, which are ultimately the ones completing the transactions right now? And that's accepting local methods, making it very easy to convert in the payment flow. And then even before that, right, how do you make sure that your products are available to agents to be recommended to users? And that is making sure that these product feeds are machine readable. There's multiple ways to do that. Our Agentic Commerce suite is one of those. We're very excited about that one. And then the last one is like starting to understand AI referral traffic, right? How that behaves, what's the average order value, what's the fraud profile? Because if that, like what we've seen is that that traffic tends to be very high quality. So taking advantage of it and optimizing it as much as possible. So that's all I had for today.
Carlos, this slide is excellent. I want to just reiterate. So this I think is really impactful, and it drives a lot of clarity. So what I got, tell me if I'm off, but what I got from today was, look, right now today, May 20th, what is happening in AI-enabled commerce is consumers are looking for products in different chat environments. You as a merchant need to make sure that your products are exposed in those environments. And then when there's a redirect, that you can easily close that sale. Is that the priority today? Is that a correct assessment?
I couldn't have said it better, Lindsay. Yes.
Amazing. Thank you. That is, those little nuggets of clarity are what we just yearn for. So I just want to drive that message to merchants. And then can you what role does the bank and processor have in that mandate that we just described? Is there something for banks? Is there something for them to do now today, May 20th, that they're not doing? Or is it more of a forward-thinking project?
I think everything that I've listed there is probably more forward-looking for banks and processors, but I'd love to hear from the audience if they have thoughts on how they could apply some of these things.
Yeah.
As a general observation, I'd say that the bigger banks are terrified because they don't really have, they're really conservative. They're the last to adopt everything. And they probably don't have people that really understand it. The better banks will have pushed forward and developed that knowledge. But even then, what should they adopt? This may be like a dividing of the banking industry. Those that are aggressive and yet careful, and those that are aggressive and not careful, and those that just say no to everything. Mm-hmm. And which group wins?
Absolutely.
But yeah, I would say that the banks specifically are terrified of this because they don't know. They're about security. That's what they offer their customers, and this is a gray area for them. And they don't want to be left holding the bag, but they also don't want their customers to be left holding the bag either, and that puts them in a tough situation.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We're gonna need some risk takers here. So,
well, what it's going to take is someone that they trust, a company that they trust that can help guide them. And I think that Stripe might be one of those companies. You could be the guys that can help them navigate that, because you're the risky part is the transaction, and that's your world. And so they will listen to you the way they won't listen to others. I think you've got some real opportunity there of guiding the banks, if you want it.
We're absolutely taking that on, for sure. Yeah, we want it to be successful. This is what makes our users at the end of the day successful. So I couldn't agree more.
Great.
Awesome.
So guys, we're running out of time. Carlos, thank you so much for your time and for being here with us today. If everyone wants to connect to Carlos, this is the LinkedIn in the QR code, so you can connect. The next slide is Lynn, just to close with a few things.
Yes, I know we're over time, everyone, but I really want to just reiterate how important it is to get full clarity as to what is going on in this ecosystem and how it is impacting. We're finally getting some comments from I guess people really enjoyed the content. It's an intimidating subject. It's hard to wrap your mind around, and that's part of our role here, is to help you all really at as if you're building with Legos, like that level of concrete. That's what we want to achieve for you guys. So at PCMI, we have several different solutions to help you navigate this system, whether you're trying to own the flow, enable the flow, or optimize and protect your own position. But our role here is to help you build intelligently. So identify where agentic commerce will actually generate real value. What are the use cases? What are the consumer segments? What are the merchant segments? Where is the money actually going to flow? And how can you win in this space? Monitor and defending your position, as this is a disruptive force in the next several years. And then looking at consumer demand. Is this something that consumers actually want? Where are they going to want it? How fast are they going to want it? And making sure that you're positioned well to take advantage of that. And I just really want to thank you, Carlos, and everyone at Stripe, Renee, who helped put this together. Stripe is really being a leader in this space, and that's what the ecosystem needs, is a leader to build the way and then teach everyone about that way. And so I want to congratulate you guys. I really enjoyed Stripe sessions, and I think you are really well positioned to be the voice that the entire ecosystem is looking for. So thank you so much. And we look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Lynn. And
thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, Carlo. Just one quick comment before we go. Just pay attention that next month, our session will be a little bit before we usually do. So it will be in June 10th. And because we accommodated the World Cup calendar, since we have a lot of Latin America and soccer fans here.
Good catch.
So just pay attention that it's in June 10th, our next session. Okay. So thank you. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.